Hi everyone, Miss B. Hanley here, and today we are just discussing Scythe as well as the project requirements for the summer reading program. So we finished up Scythe yesterday. We got to the end, very compelling ending, if I do say so myself. I really enjoyed it. I did actually enjoy the fact that it felt like an ending, like it felt like it was. You felt like satisfied at the end of the book because the ultimate conflict was resolved. However, I think Neal Shusterman did a fantastic job of making it, like a cliffhanger so that you really want to read the next part in the series. And maybe at the end of stream today, I'll read the first chapter in the next book because it is at the end of this copy that I have of Scythe. So, okay, couple of things I wanted to do today. There were, one of the things I wanted to do was just go over the project, look at what the project for Scythe entailed, and maybe we could go through some of it, talk about it. And then I also wanted to look at the patron historics. I think I've been saying that wrong this whole time. I've been saying it wrong in my head and in the book wrong so many times. I think it's patron historic. Look at the patron historics of Scythe and how they relate to the characters that chose them as their patron historic. And then we'll take a look at what's in the back of this book, like the next chapter of the book, and maybe some discussion questions possibly. Okay, so yeah, let's, I think I want to start with the project. I think that's what I want to start with. Yeah. So, for those of you who are doing the summer reading project, you are going to want to go to the SSAS website, which is ssas.org, and click on the summer reading and math section. And the Scythe book is actually considered part of the 8th grade advanced summer reading project. So when you click on that, you'll be given a document that just shows you the requirements for the project, what books you can read, and then also the rubric for how you would be graded on that project. So taking a look at the first one is Scythe. If you read the instructions, you'll kind of see like why they're asking you to, do the summer reading project. It is so that you can kind of remain smart over the summer. There is such a thing as the summer slump or the summer slide. You do lose knowledge when you don't use your brain and you don't keep your skills up. And reading is a skill, believe it or not. You have to read consistently over time to make a difference in your reading skills. So, and that includes during the summer. So obviously they want you to read the book, but then they also want you to answer the questions. They want you to write an essay and do an art project. And this is for advanced students. So that's why they are requiring just a little bit more of you to complete some things for this project. So let's talk about it. First of all, I just want to make sure that the music isn't too loud. We're not going over the music volume here a little bit. There we go. Perfect. And all right. So obviously we have the title of the book and the synopsis of the book. The first thing that we can start working on is the essay prompt. So here's the essay prompt for Scythe. Let's make this a little bit larger. Okay. Citra and Rowan, for lack of a better term, murder people as their job. Explain how both of them justify and keep their, quote, humanity as they take the lives and witness the death of other people. Be sure to use details from the novel. So first thing when we're looking at this prompt, we kind of want to figure out what's our reason for writing it? Like what's the overall goal of writing this essay? And no, the answer is not to turn it into your teacher. The answer is actually in the prompt. So the prompt says that we should explain how both of them justify what they do and keep their humanity as they do these things. So we're going to be explaining. We're going to be using expository prompt, expository style. We want to kind of remain objective. And what I mean by that is we want to try to be as non-biased or not have a point or an argument that we're trying to make. We're just trying to explain how Rowan and Citra do these things. So it's actually kind of easy if you think about it. Okay. So what I want to do real quick, let me open up a document here. Go into my drive. I have nothing here. It's not very exciting. Okay, so let's start planning this out, right? The prompt says to explain how both of them keep their humanity as they take lives and witness the death of other people. So I'm thinking that we'll probably want to have, obviously, an introduction paragraph. Obviously, we'll come back to that. The first body paragraph, I think, is going to be talking about Citra's justification and humanity. And then the second body paragraph is going to be about Rowan. Rowan's justification and humanity. You know, I could stop right there and do a conclusion, just do a 4-body paragraph. But I think that for advanced, the teachers are just going to want an extra body paragraph. And you know what? You can make it super easy. You can just compare Citra and Rowan's experiences. Okay, right? Like, that just makes it really easy because you just have one body paragraph mainly focused on Citra. You have one body paragraph mainly focused on Rowan. And then you have a body paragraph that's comparing the two. So that just organizes it a little bit better. And this is actually called, there's a term for this if you were in class last year. It's called a compare and contrast organization. So when we do our introduction, we're going to need a couple of things. First of all, like, your teacher's always going to say that you need a thesis. And the thesis is obviously the whole point of your essay. It's like why you're writing it. Now, when you're writing an explanatory essay, an expository thesis can be a little bit different than what you might be used to, right? So like in an argumentative, you would be like, oh, I'm making a claim, right? Either like Citra's better than Rowan or something like that. But this isn't argumentative. I'm not trying to argue that one of them is better than the other. I'm simply trying to explain, you can get rid of that for now. I'm simply trying to explain each of them. Okay, so in my introduction, I might come up with a thesis statement, and if there's the thunder. Okay, so it is thundering out. Last time it was thundering out, my power went out, and I wasn't able to stream for the rest of the night. I hope that doesn't happen today. It's coming down pretty hard. I think we'll be okay though. We're gonna give it a try. Okay, so my thesis statement might be, if I'm gonna compare and contrast Citra and Rowan, I might say, in Scythe, to specify, by Neal Shusterman, the characters of Citra and Rowan both experience killing other people. Either permanently, wait, do I need that? Experience killing other people. Experience other killing people, just that's where we're gonna start here. However, gotta love that however. I think this is how we do however, both of these characters react to their experiences in different ways. Beautiful. Someone can go back in and, if we want to edit that or make it sound better, you absolutely can. Please do offer comments in the chat, because I am willing to take any input here. Seriously, I hate writing by myself. Okay, so we have an introduction, we have a thesis. Obviously, I'm going to need some other information in there about it. Probably before my thesis, I'm going to want to give some kind of background information on the book, right? The book is Scythe by Neal Shusterman. And if I do talk about the title and the author in my background information, I won't have to put all of this in here. I might just put in Scythe, right? In the book, right? I don't even have to put the title at that point. but we're coming back to it. Scythe by Neal Shusterman. What it's about. And the main characters. Because those are really the main points that you're going to be focusing on in the essay itself, right? What's the whole background about the book, which you can get pretty easily from your project paper. So you could take this, reword it, put it into your own words. Doesn't have to be more than a couple of sentences, and then talk about the main characters. Who are the main characters? Because you're going to need to introduce them as well, because they're the people you're going to be talking about in your essay. Okay, so coming up with some ideas for Citra. How does Citra justify what she does? And we're going to need to come up with details from the book. So let's look at the prompt really quick again. So I need to explain how both of them justify and keep their humanity. Okay, so I'd say that Citra justifies what she does in the same way that Faraday and Curie, right? So I'm going to say that follows Faraday and Curie in the belief that there's a purpose, greater purpose to what they do. And I think that also, Citra does agree with a little bit of Scythe Curie about, releasing people almost, right? Because Scythe Curie brings up this whole idea of like becoming stagnant and finding people who are stagnant, who just don't want to go on. And maybe there's like a mercy almost in that. Mercy in gleaning those who are stagnant. Now, if I want to talk about how Citra maintains her humanity, I'm going to skip this song because it's a little too bright and happy for me right now. We need something just a little bit more chill. Actually, can we, yeah, that's fine. We're going to do a little bit more chill. Okay. Okay, so how she retains her humanity. I think a good example of this is probably going to be, okay, whoa. So how she retains her humanity. She shows compassion to everyone. And she shows compassion, and she has a very, big sense. She has a sense of justice, right? Because she's always in the book who's kind of like trying to be like, she's the one who calls out Scythe Curie when she gleans the man on the street. Actually, that's a great example. I'm going to put that there. Calling out Scythe Curie in the street after a shocking gleaning. Okay. And she shows compassion, and I'm going to use the example of Ben. When she gleans Ben, she is trying to be nice to him. I don't know. She's sad when she okay, I'm just going to put when she gleans Ben. That whole scene isn't a perfect example of her showing compassion. And I think there's probably a quote that we could find of Citra saying, I want to follow Curie. I mean, she's like, Curie like offers her, like, if you become ordained, please come back with me and we'll work together. You can be a junior Scythe under me, and we can continue to do work together. Okay. Another example of how she has a strong sense of justice is when she investigates Scythe Faraday's death, right? She doesn't believe that he would glean himself, right? At the very beginning, she's like, there's no way he could have done that. So I'm going to title this real quick, Scythe Essay. So the fact that she even goes and investigates it, that shows that she really has a sense of justice. She doesn't want whoever did kill him to get away with it. Okay, let's go to Rowan now. He's going to be a little bit harder to do. How does Rowan justify what he does? I think there's two ways. You know, I think Rowan, why does he go into it? Like, if you think about his purpose, right? He's already a pariah, right? He's already been cast out from his school, from his family. So he's trying to find a greater purpose. I would say. But I also think there's another way that Rowan, there's another way that I'm going to come up with an example of this in just a second. But there's other ways that Rowan, I feel like he justifies it, right? Like, to a certain extent, he justifies it in the same way that Goddard does sometimes, right? Goddard's reasoning. Enjoys it. Yeah. Okay, and then we have an example of that, of his training, right? And I think a good example of Rowan trying to find a greater purpose is like him, being the lettuce and wanting to escape that. Yeah. Okay. And Rowan does keep his humanity. He shows compassion. In the very beginning, when he goes to Cole Whitlock's, goes to Cole's gleaning. And I mean, the one example against his compassion, I feel like it can be read differently. It doesn't necessarily have to mean that he's not compassionate when he gleans his mom as a part of his final test, right? He knows that she's going to come back and be revived, and he doesn't really care for her anyway. So I don't necessarily think that that's him not being compassionate, although it does read that way for other people, right? It's all about what other people think in that scenario, perspective. Okay, so he shows compassion in the very beginning. He goes to Cole's gleaning. How else does Rowan keep his humanity? Okay, something else I kind of want to add to this. This could go toward the end, right? But justification for what he does, he's doing what's right. Believes he is doing good by eliminating corrupt scythes. And that is only going to be in the journal entry from Citra. I mean, if you want to use this one as an example, it's okay. You can do that. It's just you're not gonna get as much information about that one. You're gonna have to kind of back that one up with paraphrasing, because the only evidence that we have that he's doing that is a journal entry from Citra at the very end, and it doesn't even say his name, right? It just says someone known as Scythe Lucifer, and she alludes to it being him because, right, she says at the end, like he once did, right? Sees me as a good one, like he once did. And then if we read the first chapter of the next book, which we may do at the end, you'll see a little bit more of that. But it's an example you could use in this essay, but it's not going to be as strong, not going to have as much evidence for that one as the other ones would. Okay. Go away, fly. Please, go away. Okay. That's what I'm going to do for Rowan right now. And then if we compare and contrast their experiences, let's talk about Rowan. Okay, so Citra follows the old guard, but Rowan is kind of going with the new. He's not really going with the new, though, right? He's not really going with the new guard. He's more like he's going his own direction, right? I'd say splits off from official from official Scythes, because I mean, he is a Scythe. He's killing people, right? It's not necessarily a part of the rules. Okay, I'm just going to add that. And that's only, again, that example's only going to be given in Citra's journal. Well, we could say he trains with new guard, with the new order. Citra, let's see. Okay, so if you could compare and contrast Citra's, bereaving families, helping the families, while Rowan is given a chance to, Rowan never meets the families of those he gleans. And that can be seen, in the part with Citra and Curie dinners. And then also Rowan, my battery's low. Which one? This one? It's not telling me that it's low. Okay. The dinners with the families, Citra and Curry dinners. And then we can put Rowan never meets the family. Volta cries after talking to families. And you see Rowan and Volta kind of have that conversation. So that's a good example there. Okay. More compare, contrast. Let's just make sure we're going back to the main thing, right? The prompt says to explain how they justify and keep their humanity. Okay. I'm going to do this real quick. I'm just going to move this up here. No. Okay. Come on, man. Can you just please, like, why is it doing that? I just want you to be normal. Is that so hard to ask? Apparently it is. Okay, whatever. So, fine. Go back here. I don't know. I don't know what's going on with my document right now. It just doesn't want to listen. Doesn't want to pay attention to me. Okay, you get the idea, right? Okay, so he shows compassion at the very beginning. We bring this down here. Believes he's... Yeah, I'm just going to leave that one on here because I just, it's a good, it might be a good one to use, but it's going to be hard probably to incorporate with evidence. Okay, as far as compare and contrast Citra and Curie dinners, Volta cries after talking to the families. Let's see, what's another way we can compare? Okay, Citra's training doesn't involve, Citra's training focuses on individuals, but Rowan's training, unfortunately, Rowan's training focuses on kill count. And parties. In the example with the dinners and with Curie, like, looking into their eyes, that's very personal. It's very, like, individual. Rowan's training, the example of the live training sessions. And Goddard shuns poisons too, right? Like he has a very specific way he wants it to be bloody and just, you know, awful. Okay, so conclusion, all I really need to do in my conclusion is going to be to just reiterate what I've kind of said, right? You have Citra and Rowan. Kara Citra, I'm just going to copy this and then we're going to reword it down here is actually what we're going to do. Okay, Citra and Rowan both experience training to be a Scythe differently. Under Scythe Faraday, even under Scythe Faraday, I would put even under Scythe Faraday, their tasks were often different. We can actually put this up here if I wanted to, right? Under Faraday, he had them do different things, right? Like he had them Citra with the milk and the ring. And then what did he do differently with Rowan? He took him. Didn't he take Rowan somewhere that he didn't take Citra or something? I can't remember. I'm just going to use one example for that. I mean, because you can include the fact that Faraday mentions, you know, let's see how long it takes Rowan. Okay. Their training was different. Training was different. Yeah, we'll just leave it at that. I'm going to make this a whole sentence, though. Training was different. Once they were separated and pitted against each other, their trainings changed completely, with new scythes offering new perspectives. I don't know. I feel like that's a lot of words, but their training is different. Scythe differently, even under Scythe Faraday, their training was different once they were separated and put against each other. Training changed completely with new scythes offering new perspectives. Both of them attempt to, what's the word? Justify what they do, as well as keep their humanity. But diverge down completely different paths. I mean, you could even go into your conclusion. You can give a little bit more opinion in your conclusion. You could even say, you know, I mean, personally, I think that's why Citra was chosen over Rowan, because of his kind of ruthless way that he went about his final test. I mean, obviously they're looking at all of their tests, and the last two tests for Rowan were extremely brutal. You know, like he broke Citra's neck in the second test, and in the final test, he didn't even flinch at killing his mom. So I feel like to a certain extent, his training actually made it harder for him to win, because Goddard made him so kind of like ruthless and, you know, bloodthirsty. And because Citra had a little bit more of hesitation, compassion, you know, empathy during her test, you know, I think it just showcased her better, right? It just made her seem more fit for the job because she was more compassionate and thought through what she did more. My personal opinion, but you can add that in the conclusion. I think that there's nothing wrong with adding in that information like that. Okay. So he outlined a whole essay. Look at that, you guys. That's amazing. And we're not even 30 minutes in. Okay. So that's the essay portion. For the art project, which seems so cool, we get to design our own Scythe robe. This can be done with an actual robe gown, which would be really cool, but I don't have, or digitally. So we're going to do it digitally. Be sure to explain the details you've selected and to also include your Scythe name as well and why you have chosen it. Okay, so this is a really great opportunity to pause in our project to look at the patron historic, I keep saying it wrong, the patron historic of each of the Scythes in this book. So let's get to it. Okay, yay! It's up, perfect. Okay, cool. So let's start with Scythe Faraday. Okay, first and foremost, I want to say I got all of the art for these characters. I was gonna do my perfect cast, but then I was like, it's my cast, and I want it to mean like I want them to be in their characters, like in their costumes and stuff. So I did find this amazing website called. Let's see. I'll show you guys right now. I'll show you what it is. It's called Arc of a Scythe Wiki, and it has the whole series. I've been actually avoiding a lot of areas on this page because there's so many spoilers, because it's about the whole series. And oh my gosh, there's another book. What? Oh, stories from the Arc of a Scythe. Okay, so it's like a short stories thing. Oh my god, I have to read it. Okay, I'm freaking out a little bit. Okay, not gonna go down further because I know I don't want to see anything. Okay, so are you warning me about the weather? Yeah, okay. So I got a ton of information from this page for this particular little show here. And I did get the art from that wiki page as well. So all of the art is fan art, and I've tried to credit the author every chance that I could. So yeah, just heads up. So first we have Scythe Faraday, and this fan art is by Des Mid, I believe, from the wiki page. And Scythe Faraday, his patron historic, is Michael Faraday, who is a scientist and he's a scientist. He's a scientist who contributed to the study of magnetism and electrochemistry. So thinking about that, Scythe Faraday wasn't a scientist in my opinion. I thought he was more of a kind of a philosopher. But here's some information about Scythe Faraday, or Michael Faraday, the actual person he's named after. And before you guys get mad, yes, I'm using Wikipedia. Don't hate on Wikipedia, okay? It's okay. Like, it's okay. There's no banner on this page that says there's wrong information. All of the sources for this page are right down here. Look at how many sources there are. And the last time it was edited was 2 days ago. Okay, so we're fine. All right, Michael Faraday. Now that I've done that, now that I've gotten that out of the way, that nonsense out of the way, let's look at Michael Faraday. Okay, can we bring? Let's do something real quick. I'm just gonna fix something. Put on nightlight here. Is that a little bit better? Actually, I think it is. Perfect. Okay. Michael Faraday, English scientist. So he was in England, Middlesex, in Newington. Wow, that sucks. He was in Newington Butts and Middlesex. Great places to be from in England. And he is a scientist who contributed to the study of electromagnetism and electrochemistry. His main discoveries include the principles of underlying that's way too far in. Electromagnetic induction, dimagnetism, and electrosis. It says, although he received little formal education, I did want to kind of go in here a little bit. There we go. That's a little bit better. Although, that's fine. Although he received, okay, perfect. Little formal education, he was one of the most influential scientists in history. It was by his research of the magnetic field around a conductor carrying a direct current that Faraday established basic concept for electromagnetic field in physics. He also established that magnetism could reflect rays of light and that there was underlying relationship between the two phenomena. He similarly discovered the principles of electromagnetic induction, which we just said, diamagnetism, and the laws of electrosis. His inventions of electromagnetic rotary devices formed the foundation of electric motor technology, and it was largely due to his efforts that electricity became practical for use in technology. So he was really prominent in electric magnetism, electricity. He was like a breakthrough scientist in the field who gave us a lot of what we do today. So when it comes to Scythe Faraday, right, you could say that he has a lot of the similar traits that the character in the book has, right? He's like a, maybe not though, I guess, because Faraday doesn't necessarily want to change the way that they do their job, right? He's not trying to break through anything. But maybe because he's a scientist who made a great discovery for the people that, and if you think about it, without Michael Faraday, there's a lot of things that we wouldn't have, right? I mean, unless someone else came along and invented them, right? But we have him to thank for a lot of things, right? Like me right now streaming this on YouTube is a huge thanks to Michael Faraday. So, maybe because he was so prominent and such a huge figure in this area, and maybe, Faraday likes technology. I don't know. Oh, maybe it could be like the connection to the Thunderhead, because the Thunderhead is the ultimate piece of technology in the world. And so maybe he sees his connection with that, with his patron historic. I don't know. I'm just kind of speculating here, but yeah, Michael Faraday. Let's see. Royal Institution in Public Service. Okay. He had a long association with the Royal Institution of Great Britain. He was appointed Assistant Superintendent of the House of the Royal Institution in 1821. He was elected member of the Royal Society, blah, blah, blah. A position to which he was appointed for life without the obligation to deliver lectures. His sponsor and mentor was John Madjack Fuller, who created the position at the Royal. Okay, so what was this? Beyond his scientific research into areas such as chemistry, electricity, and magnetism at the Royal Institution, Faraday undertook numerous and oftentimes consuming service projects for private enterprise and the British government. Okay, so he did help people like the British government and other companies kind of help produce their things, which probably were to help the community, the people in Britain at the time. Being generous, probably. Respected scientist in a nation with strong maritime interests, he spent extensive amounts of time on projects such as the construction and operation of lighthouses. That's huge, right? Because you've got boats sailing out there in the dark. It can be hard to see if they're coming to an island. And protecting the bottoms of ships from corrosion. Okay, so he did really kind of help a lot of certain things, especially had a big hand in his community and trying to make that better and stuff. Okay, cool. His work included investigations of explosions in coal mines, being an expert witness in court along with 2 engineers from Chance Brothers, the preparation of high-quality optical glass, which was required for Chance for its lighthouses. So yeah, so he was really involved. Okay, cool. So that's Michael Faraday. Oh, you guys didn't see any of what I just read, but yeah, it's right there here on the Wikipedia page when it comes to his Royal Institution in Public Service. It talks a lot about that. Okay, we are going to go back real quick though to the next Scythe on my presentation, which is Scythe Curie. Look at this amazing art by Rat Girl Studios. Like, love it. Love it. This is so my vibe. That's totally what I want to look like. Just long gray hair, purple robe. Yeah, she looks like a killer. I mean, like, in a good way, right? Like, she looks killer. Okay. Anyway, Scythe Curie is named after none other than Marie Curie, who is a physicist and chemist researching radioactivity. So Marie Curie is actually huge, and I feel like it does fit with Scythe Curie's character. So Marie Salomea Sklodowska Curie is a Polish naturalized French physicist. So she was born in Poland, but she married, I believe, a Frenchman. And so that's how she became, her husband, Pierre. She married a Frenchman, so she became a naturalized French citizen. And she conducted pioneering research in radioactivity. Now, this was really huge because this was before the time of, like, gloves and suits when you did science with things, with chemicals you didn't understand or with things you didn't understand. And so Pierre and Marie were using these radioactive substances with no protection whatsoever. So they really sacrificed their lives for us to help us understand more about these elements and radioactivity. So it was really, really just unbelievably massive contribution to our society, to the world, to our society, Marie Curie. She was the first woman to win a Nobel Prize. She was the first person and only woman to win the Nobel Prize twice, and the only person to win the Nobel Prize in 2 scientific fields. So she did win it with her husband. He was a co-winner of her first Nobel Prize, making them the first ever married couple to win, and launching the Curie family legacy of 5 Nobel Prizes. So not only was she, but she had a whole family that really contributed to the world. In 1906, she was the first woman to become a professor at the University of Paris. So super, super huge person of note in history. And for Scythe Curie to choose her as her patron historic is very telling of her as well, because I think it means that she sees herself as a person who is contributing to the society at large, and sacrificing herself and a lot of what she wants in order to do them, right? So, the discovery of polonium and radium were huge advances in technology and in the industrial age. And I think for Scythe Curie, right, the invention of scythes to curb the population is a huge change for society, but one that is necessary. And she, unfortunately, instead of giving her life like Marie Curie did, she is in the same way, like not in like the equivalent way, I mean, right? Like Marie Curie unfortunately passed because of the radioactivity that she was dealing with. And Scythe Curie has to give her immortal life to be a scythe, right? She can't have kids. She can't be with the love of her life, Michael Faraday. Oh my God. But she is doing it anyway. She's doing this anyway, and she's accepted her responsibility, her role in society. So Marie Curie, I think, is a great patron historic for Scythe Curie, and I think there's a lot of similarities there. And it's obvious to see why she chose Marie Curie as her patron historic. Okay, moving right along, I decided to fit the old guard scythes into one side of this presentation, and so I wanted to talk about Scythe Mandela for a moment. Now, unfortunately, there's no fan art of Scythe Mandela, which I think is a real shame. I think there absolutely should be. So, go make some Scythe Mandela fan art, please. Okay, so instead I chose the cover image from the Thunderhead. I don't think this is supposed to be Scythe Mandela. I remember reading that his robes were earth tone green, like an earth brown green. And so I chose this as the cover art for him, but I'm pretty sure that the cover art on Thunderhead is supposed to be Citra and Rowan in their black and green robes. But anyway, so Scythe Mandela his patron historic is Nelson Mandela, who is the former president of South Africa and a political activist. So he was a huge political force in Africa, specifically when it comes to the government and what was going on with the religiously, politically, all that kind of stuff. I'm not going to go into too much detail because I'm not a history teacher. So I'm not going to go into too much detail, but you can read the Wikipedia article if you would like. And if you want to know, Marie Curie's Wikipedia article does have a ton of things as well. It was last edited on the 16th of July, and Nelson Mandela's page is edited it was huge. Oh my God, there's so much information here. 19th Okay, so we're still up to date. We're still really, really good. Okay, so Nelson Mandela, South African anti-apartheid activist. So I had to look up what apartheid was a while ago, and basically it was, I'm pretty sure it's apartheid is in South Africa originated from several independent sectors of South African society and took forms ranging from social movements and passive resistance to guerrilla warfare. So I think it had something to do with religious freedom. I'm not entirely sure. Oh, here we go. Here we go. It was a system of institutionalized racial oppression. Okay, so it wasn't religious. It was racial oppression, basic human rights being denied to people that existed in South Africa and Southwest Africa in the from 1948 until 1990. That's crazy. It was a long time. Okay, anyway, so Nelson Mandela was president from 1994 to 1999. He was the country's first black head of state and the first elected in a fully representative democratic election in South Africa at the time. So it was pretty huge for the country itself to have this African black man in the country leading them, and his government focused on dismantling the legacy of the apartheid, which fostered, which was about racial rights or human rights, but about racial divide. It was racial oppression, and they fostered racial reconciliation. So I think that if we're looking at the old guard sides, you have these people like Michael Faraday, you have Marie Curie, and you have Nelson Mandela, who have made huge contributions to society, both scientifically, but also politically, and philosophically. And I think that when you look at them, they had a very good sense of justice, of social justice, of what it meant to contribute to society, right? So when we get into the next couple of sides that are more of the new order sides, we're going to look at kind of what their patron historics perspectives were as well. So let's get into it. And of course, I'm going to talk about Citra and Rowan as well. Okay. Next up, Scythe Goddard. This beautiful fan art by Rat Girl Studios is also really good. It makes him look like the guy. It makes him look like there's so many actors, I can't remember their names exactly, but he makes him look like the guy who was in Obi-Wan just recently. I'm gonna have to look that up later. Put that on my fan caster. Okay, but Scythe Goddard's patron historic is Robert H. Goddard. And honestly, there's nowhere in the book that it says that. Nowhere in the book that it says that. I don't even know. Maybe Chomsky calls him Bob one time. I feel like he does. I feel like there's like a Bob joke in there somewhere. But Robert H. Goddard is credited with the invention of the jet-fueled rocket, which if you just stop there, I feel like is a good descriptor for Goddard, right? Like he is kind of like his own jet-fueled rocket, right? Just like zooming off on his own will, just completely destructive. So let's go ahead and take a look at Robert H. Goddard's Wikipedia page anyway. Okay. So just so we know, this one was last edited. We have a ton of resources down here. This one was last edited at the start of this month, July 3rd. Coming back up. Okay. American engineer, professor, and physicist and inventor, credited with creating the world's first liquid-fueled rocket. I said jet-fueled rocket, but liquid-fueled rocket, same thing. He successfully launched his rocket in 1926, which ushered in an era of space flight innovation. So this is really still a huge contribution. I'm sure that Goddard has to choose kind of someone that has an impact on society. But if you think about it, right, this invention, while it did lead to the space age, right, which is a really great contribution to our society, trying to, leave the planet and explore the galaxies around us, it also has led to the creation of ballistic missiles and other, war things, right? Like war stuff that destroys things. Oh, and there's something about Roswell, New Mexico in here. Let's look at this. With the new financial, Goddard eventually recloaded to Roswell, Mexico in the summer of 1930. Was he in Area 51? Well, that would be even bigger, right? Goddard's hiding something, in the book, but he's also, Bob Goddard's also hiding in Area 51. No, I don't think that's true. I'm just making that up. Upon his return to Roswell, he began his work on the A-series rockets. Interesting. Let's look more back at this table of contents real quick. Method of reaching extreme altitudes is one of his articles. Let's see. Thought it would be premature to disclose the results of his experiments because his engine was not sufficiently developed. Dr. Webster realized that Goddard had accomplished a good deal of the fine work and insisted that Goddard publish his progress so far, or he would take care of it himself. So Goddard asked the Smithsonian Institution if it would publish the report with updated with notes that he had submitted in late 1916. They published his work in 1919. The report describes Goddard's mathematical theories of rocket flight, his experiments with solid fuel rockets, and the possibilities he saw of exploring Earth's atmosphere and beyond. Along with Konstantin Tisolostab, some Russian guy, earlier work, which is not widely disseminated about outside Russia, Goddard's report is regarded one of the pioneering works of science rocketry. Okay, so there was criticism, though. Wait. So most of his work is theoretical. Goddard eschewed publicity because he did not have time to reply to criticisms of his work. That's kind of opposite, though, of the real life Goddard, right? The real life, or the Scythe Goddard, he was all about publicity, right? He was always all about, like, being in the spotlight. But he does not have time to reply to criticism, right? He's always, like, saying people are calling him out. And his imaginative ideas about space travel were shared only with private groups he trusted. He did, though, publish and talk about the rocket principle and sounding rockets, since these subjects were not too far out. In the letter to Smithsonian dated 1920, he discussed photographing the moon and planets from rocket-powered flyby probes, sending messages to distant civilizations on inscribed metal plates, which did happen, which has occurred. The use of solar energy in space, and the idea of high-velocity ion propulsion. Clearly describes the concept of ablative heat shield, suggesting is the movement of an object from outer space into and through the gases of an atmospheric of a planet, dwarf planet, natural planet, suggesting that the landing apparatus be covered with layers of very infusible hard substance with layers of poor heat conductor in between, designed to erode in the same way as the surface of a meteor. So he was pretty smart. It's actually not a bad patron historic for him. But let's see. Okay, so a day after his front page story about the rocket, an unsigned New York Times editorial in a section entitled Topics of the Times scoffed at the proposal. As a method of sending a missile into the higher and even highest part of the Earth's atmospheric envelope, Professor Goddard's multiple charge rocket is a practical, therefore promising device. Okay, that sounds like it was positive. It is not obvious, however, that the instruments would return to the point of departure. Indeed, it is obvious they would not, for parachutes drift exactly as balloons do. Pressed further on Goddard's proposal to launch rockets beyond the atmosphere. Of course, Goddard only seems to lack the knowledge ladled out in daily high schools. Wow, that's ouch. That was meant to be mean. That was meant to be mean right there. Oh, and he had to issue a correction after the Apollo 11 mission. Wow. Fascinating. Space flight has to do with space flight. It kind of goes actually with his whole vibe, right? Because he's got a blue robe, and the diamonds are in there like almost like stars, like he's like the night sky or something. That's kind of like that's kind of interesting. Not too controversial though. I feel like his friends, the other Scythes that we're going to be introduced to in just a second, I feel like they have a little bit more controversial patron historics. So let's get into that. Scythe Chomsky. This is a wonderful piece of art, fan art from Lazarillo.o. Highly recommend it. I found it on DeviantArt. I don't know if that's the actual, I assume that's the actual artist since they put the watermark on their picture. Okay, So Scythe Chomsky comes from Noam Chomsky, who is a linguist, philosopher, and political activist. Pretty controversial. He's pretty controversial. So Noam Chomsky is a fairly recent figure, not as old as some of the other ones that we've talked about so far. He was born in 1928, and he's currently 93. He's still alive. And he's a social critic. He's an essayist and political activist, sometimes called the father of modern linguistics. He's a major figure in analytic philosophy, which, just to explain that a little bit more, is a branch and tradition of philosophy using analysis, which began around the turn of the 20th century. So just kind of like analyzing language and how it relates to society and politics. He's a current professor of linguistics at University of Arizona, and ideologically he aligns with anarcho-syndicalism, which is a political philosophy and anarchist school of thought that views revolutionary industrial unionism or syndicalism as a method for workers in capitalist society to gain control of economy and thus control influence in broader society. Okay, and libertarian socialism. Libertarian socialism, also referred to as anarchist socialism, is a left-wing, anti-authoritarian, anti-statist, and libertarian political philosophy within the socialists. So I'm just going to try to break down as much as what I try to understand from that as possible. He basically believes that we shouldn't really have a government, that the government is not good, right? That comes from the anarchist, anacro, right? Like, no government. No state, right? Doesn't want the involvement of them. But it also seems like he wants to include some kind of socialism in that, where the community works together to be a part of, to like help the whole community, to that kind of thing. Still pretty controversial because he's written about some of the obviously most recent current events and political events that have happened in our world. His defense of unconditional free speech, including that of Holocaust denial, generated significant controversy in the 80s, and still this very controversial subject, right? Like, to say Holocaust denial are people who believe that the Holocaust did not happen. So, and he's saying that it's free speech. We should be able to do it. People should be able to talk about it. That's really controversial. That's a really controversial, stance to be on, to allow people to say that the Holocaust didn't happen. It's very controversial. Since retiring from active teaching at MIT, he has continued to be vocal about his political activism, including opposing the 2003 invasion of Iraq, which we were, America was a part of, and supporting the Occupy movement, which is the Occupy Wall Street movement, trying to basically take back our country from capitalists. Chomsky began teaching at the University of Arizona in 2017. Okay. One of the most cited scholars alive, says one of these references. Chomsky says influence a broad array of academic fields. He is widely recognized as having helped a spark of cognitive revolution in human scientists, which cognitive has to do with like mind. And so it says here is an intellectual movement that began in the 1950s as an interdisciplinary study of the mind and its processes. Later became known as collective cognitive science. So psychology, behavioral science, all of that kind of stuff in the human sciences, contributing to the development of new cognitivism framework for the study of language. So he has contributed a lot to what it talks about, what it seems like with language, and how we analyze language and how it is in our brain. But he's also controversial. He's an anarchist, very much against the government. And if we keep going down, right, we'll see his political views, capitalism and socialism. He's developed a dislike for capitalism and the pursuit of material wealth, authoritarian socialism. So if we're looking at the Chomsky from the book, right? The big, blonde, hulking dude who uses a flamethrower. You know, matching him up with this guy is a little interesting because it doesn't really seem like Scythe Chomsky is the reading type, right? He doesn't really seem like the kind of Scythe who's interested in words, language, right? More interested in burning people alive. But it does seem like he may have chosen Chomsky as a figure for controversial reasons, because he's controversial, because his ideas are controversial, and Chomsky is, you know, going against the traditional Scythedom, right? He's just the way that Chomsky goes against the traditional ideas of capitalism and socialism, even, because even that whole idea is very, very different, like anarchic socialism. So maybe that's kind of where we're going with that. He is a little bit more of a more recent patron histrionic, right? He's still alive in our world today. So yeah. Okay. Controversial, I think, is the main thing that we're trying to pull out from there for Chomsky. Okay, so moving right along, right, to Rand, Scythe Rand, another beautiful fan art by Rat Girl Studios. Scythe Rand got her patron historic from Ayn Rand, another very controversial figure, even today. She's a writer, philosopher. She is credited with the philosophical belief of objectivism, which I'm going to talk about right now. So, Ayn Rand is born Elisa Zioviena Rosenbaum, Alice O'Connor. She goes by many names, but she's known by her pen name, Ayn Rand. She's Russian-born American writer and philosopher. She's known for her fiction and developing a philosophical system she called objectivism. Just so we know, define objectivism is a philosophical system developed by her. She's the one who came up with it. She first expressed it in her book called The Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged, and later in fiction. So we're just going to look this up real quick. Can we just talk about it? What is it? The main tenets are that reality exists independently of consciousness, that human beings have direct contact with reality through sense perception. Basically, you touch, you see, you smell, you hear, you taste. That's reality. And that one contain objective knowledge from perception through the process of concept formation and inductive logic. So it's very much based on logic. She again continues this into her moral beliefs that proper moral purpose of one's life is to pursue your own happiness, right? It's like whatever you want, whatever makes you happy is what you should pursue, and that the only social system consistent with this morality is individual rights and laissez-faire capitalism, which is a very controversial subject in and of itself. From what I understand about that whole idea is that basically there really shouldn't be any restrictions on companies, on people who want to attain massive amounts of wealth. They should be able to, basically, and Rand stipulates in objectivism. She's very much supportive of that, of people like obtaining their own individual rights and own happiness for just themselves. There really shouldn't be any concern about doing things for the community, which is kind of interesting because it kind of seems like to me, Noam Chomsky and Ayn Rand are on different stances here, right? Because Rand opposed libertarianism, which is what Chomsky was supporting, which she views it as anarchism. Again, that's what Chomsky is supporting, right? She is opposing libertarianism. But she is often associated with the modern libertarian movement of the United States, which kind of does kind of go hand in hand if you think about it, because libertarian is less about restrictions, less about government, and laissez-faire capitalism is the same thing, right? Less restrictions on companies, less restrictions from the government on those things. And she has had a lot of fame since her death, right? That's the biggest thing, is that not only has she continued. Her ideas have continued when she was alive, but even after she died, her ideas continued and have spread a bunch and become really popular. She's still a very controversial figure. You know, you talk about Ayn Rand, and if you are like a supporter of Ayn Rand, people are going to maybe look at you a little funny, because she does have some pretty radical ideas, especially about human beings, and how they work, and her perceptions of them. Her two biggest books of note are The Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged, in which she really does kind of outline her ideas in those books. They're fiction, completely fictional, but she kind of does show her philosophical views in those two books. So looking at Rand as a Scythe in the book, it is kind of interesting that she and Chomsky are the two other Scythes with Goddard. Both of them have chosen pretty controversial patron historics. And it seems kind of strange that they're both kind of on different sides too. You know, Ayn Rand, I think, really fits Scythe Rand's character, specifically because, you know, Ayn Rand is all about herself. She supports ethical egotism, which is basically you're worried about yourself. You're worried, focused on yourself. There's no such thing as altruism, doing things for other people, or sacrificing some part of yourself for another person. Which it seems like Chomsky, if I look back on his, seems to be about helping other people. I don't know, but he also had some very controversial views as well, especially about free speech and all that kind of stuff. So two very different but controversial patron historics. And I think that goes to show that, you know, Goddard chose them because they were controversial. They did choose people who were very controversial. Let's get rid of adjectivism and let's go on to something nicer. Let's talk about Scythe Volta. Look at this beautiful art by J. Reb, found it on DeviantArt. It's beautiful. Scythe Volta's patron historic is Alessandro Volta, who was a physicist, chemist, and pioneered electricity and battery power. This is why it's so funny that Volta was not a junior Scythe to Scythe Faraday, because it almost seems like he should have been, because both of them have chosen patron historics that have to do with electricity. So a couple interesting things about Alessandro Volta that I found out was that not only is he an Italian physicist, chemist, but he's also a lay Catholic. And I don't know, did that have anything to do with his, yeah, okay. So he was raised as a Catholic and for all of his life continued to maintain his belief. Because he was not ordained a clergyman as his family expected, he was sometimes accused of being irreligious. And some people have speculated about this possible unbelief, stressing that he did not join the church or that he virtually ignored the church's call. That's really interesting because when it comes to Volta, right, if you think about the church that he's been kind of called to be in, Goddard's church, he doesn't want to be a part of it, right? He's claiming to be one of Goddard's posse, but he doesn't really want to be in Goddard's posse. He ends up leaving it the only way he possibly can, through self-gleaning. So that is, I think that's a particularly big similarity in their two stories here. And I think maybe, I don't know if, you know, Scythe Volta had chosen him because of that, or if it would just happen to be a coincidence. But it is pretty interesting. Another president of the Royal Society, similar to the way that Michael Faraday was. Again, a lot of similarities that seem that between him and Faraday. It's almost like Volta really wanted to be with Faraday. Just a thought. But yeah, I thought that was a pretty interesting thing about his religious beliefs and how that affected him. And he also created an early battery, which is pretty huge too. That's pretty big, right? Okay, so moving along, we'll just move along again. Yeah, that was a big interesting thing I found about Scythe Volta. It seemed like the biggest connection. Okay, Next one is High Blade Xenocrates. And no, that is not any fan art. I couldn't find any fan art of High Blade Xenocrates either. So I chose a painting of one of the popes. This is the meanest picture I could find of one of the popes, but it seemed like the closest thing to Scythe's or to High Blade Xenocrates that I could determine. So Xenocrates is probably the oldest patron historic mentioned in the book. No, that's not true. I lied. High Blade Prometheus is probably the oldest patron historic mentioned in the book. But as far as characters that we meet go, Xenocrates is probably the oldest. So here we go. This article relies on references to primary sources, please improve by editing secondary and tertiary sources. So we do have a little note here. Here's the only thing I'm going to say about this is that relying on primary sources is not a bad thing. Okay, yes, you do want to have secondary and tertiary sources, but primary sources, it's the first degree, right? So, it's not that necessarily that bad of a thing. Also, this page was edited last on July 15th. And if we want to go back to Rand and Chomsky, they're the newest ones, actually. Let's go ahead and look at when theirs were. Chomsky was edited just recently on the 20th, 2 days ago. And Rand was edited on the 21st. So yesterday. And Alessandro Volta was edited on the 13th of July. So all of these are really up to date. Even Xenocrates was edited fairly recently. Okay, so Xenocrates is a Greek philosopher, mathematician. He was a leader, a scholarch of the Platonic Academy. So if he was a student and then become leader of the Platonic Academy, the Platonic Academy is the academy of Plato, who was a student of Socrates. These are all people who kind of passed down their knowledge in the Greek philosopher world. Xenocrates, his teachings followed Plato, which he attempted to find more closely, often with mathematical elements. So he was very much focused on math. And he was also an avid student of the Council of 33. Clarification needed. It's not clear what this refers to, and there appears to be no mention of the council later in the article. Yeah, that's interesting. Oh, maybe it's a secret. It's like a secret hidden treasure. The council. It's a secret society. The Council of 33. Oh my God. We found a new one. That's going to be my new secret society. 33. That's the one. Okay, he distinguished three forms of being: the sensible, the intelligible, and the third compounded into the two, to which correspond respectively sense, intellect, and opinion. He considered unity and duality to be gods, which rule the universe, and the soul a self-moving number. A self-moving number. The soul is a self-moving number. That is, wow, that's pretty, that's deep. If you're a math person. I'm not, but I bet that would be if I was a math person. God pervades all things, and there are demonical powers intermediate between the divine and the mortal, which consist in conditions of the soul. So basically, he believes that there is God, and everything is good, but there are demonical powers between God and us, which make us also bad, right? We're good. We have good things, the capacity to be loving and caring for people, but we also have the capacity for hatred and anger. So that's what he said. That's what he believes. He held that mathematical objects and the Platonic ideas are identical, unlike Plato, who distinguished them. So he did differentiate himself from Plato a bit. Most of the Greek philosophers after Plato did, because they had to. They didn't want to copy him, like everybody's going to be like, oh, you just copy Plato, right? So they had to come up with something new. In ethics, he taught that virtue produces happiness, but external goods can minister to it and enable it to affect its purpose. Okay, here's the main line in this that fits with the character Xenocrates in the book. High Blade Xenocrates, he believes that the Scythes should follow the commandments, right? Follow the rules. However, he has this house on top of the tallest building in the city to have the most beautiful view. So in this sentence here, he says in ethics, right? Ethics, morals, things that we kind of guide ourselves by. He taught that virtue produces happiness. So goodness, good things you will do will make you happy, will bring happiness. But external goods can minister to it and enable it to affect its purpose, right? So Xenocrates believed that money could buy you happiness, right? External goods can enable it, right? Can enable your happiness, can affect its happiness, can bring you to happiness. So in the same way that Xenocrates, I think, kind of doesn't like that commandment, right? Like, did I stop listening to music? Did we stop? Yeah, we're going to keep listening. Come on. Didn't think I was listening. Okay. But yeah, it does fit with the character, right? With with the Highblade Xenocrates, as far as like his contradictory acts that he does in the book, you know, what he does to try and get Citra out of the competition, and the way that he kind of follows Goddard and doesn't really stand up to him, and the way he presents himself, his house on top of the highest city in Fulcrum City. So pretty big deal. Okay. Okay. Next up, we're getting into the last of the patron historics for this book. Let's talk about Anastasia, aka our main girl, Citra. If you haven't read the book yet, Citra does become a Scythe, and she gets this beautiful green robe, which I love, this art by Kat Adera, right? She looks so gorgeous. And she goes by Scythe Anastasia, which is interesting because all of the other Scythes go by the last name of their patron historic. So technically, if she was supposed to do this, she should be Scythe Romanov. I don't know if they changed that in the second book, but I get the feeling that they don't. But she goes by Scythe Anastasia, Anastasia Romanov. She talks about this in the book, by the way. At the end of this book, in the last chapter, she talks about why she chooses Scythe Anastasia, which does make a lot of sense. But let's get into who Anastasia Romanov was in a little bit more depth. Okay. Grand Duchess Anastasia Nikolaevna of Russia was the youngest daughter of Tsar Nicholas II and the last sovereign of Imperial Russia, and his wife, Tsarina Alexandra Fyodorovna. Okay, yeah, there we go. Anyway, so she had a couple of sisters. She was the younger sister of the Grand Duchess Olga, Tatiana, and Maria, but she was older than her brother Alexei, and she was killed in her family by a group of Bolsheviks in 1918. So Russian history, like I said, I'm not a history teacher. So if I get stuff wrong, it's going to be 100% that I don't know anything I'm talking about. But anyway, I do know that similar to the way that America had a revolution and France had a revolution, Russia also had their own revolution, which was against the ruling class of the country at the time, which were the czars. And it's kind of the same reason why Americans wanted independence from Britain, and mainly the same reasons why the French wanted to get rid of their royalty. They were too rich. Okay. They just had too much money, and they were taking money from the community, from their people, and the people just didn't like it, right? This is what I'm understanding. It's basically what I'm understanding, right? They didn't want them to rule anymore. They didn't want royalty, okay? They didn't want a king, they didn't want a queen, they didn't want a czar. So they banded together in the same way that the people of France did in Les Mis, and they tried to attack the royal parties. They hunted them down, and they pushed them into the basement of their castle, of their home, and they killed them. So there's a whole movie. Disney made a whole movie about Anastasia, and it got me too. When I was younger, it was that movie that I loved. But they talked about how there was a possibility that Anastasia had escaped, right? Persistent rumors of her possible escape circulated after her death, fueled by the fact that location of her burial was unknown during the decades of communist rule. So after they killed them, they nobody knew where they buried the bodies. The abandoned mine serving as the mass grave near where they were killed. I'm just not going to try and say these names, which held the acidified remains of the Tsar, his wife, and 3 of their daughters, was revealed in 1991. These remains were put to rest at Peter and Paul Fortress in 1998. The bodies of Alexei and the remaining daughter, either Anastasia or her older sister Maria, were discovered in 2007. Her purported survival has conclusively been disproven. So there's no way she survived. Scientific analysis including DNA testing, confirmed that the remains are those of the imperial family, showing that all 4 Grand Duchesses were killed in 1918. 7 women, and that's the crazy thing about this, is that there were rumors that people, that she escaped, and of course people came forward and was like, I'm Anastasia. Several women falsely claimed to have been Anastasia. The best known imposter was Anna Anderson, who does look like her. Anderson's body was cremated upon her death in 1984, but DNA testing in 1994 on available samples of Anderson's tissue and hair showed no relation to the Romanov family. Okay, so obviously Citra chooses Anastasia because she was killed prematurely, right? She had a lot of potential to be a good ruler or a person to change, right? But she didn't get that chance, right? And unfortunately, it is pretty sad. She was just a young girl. How old was she? She was 17 when she died. She does not know anything about politics. She did not know. She was born into the royal family. She had no clue about the problems that the people were facing. So it is really quite sad that she died, because she wasn't, I would say she wasn't like a person who deserved to be killed in such a way, right? It's not like she was a part of bringing people down or trying to oppress people. She was just born into the family. So, okay. And it's interesting that Citra chooses her as her patron historic in the same way, just because, she didn't really do anything that interesting other than the fact that she died prematurely, or she died at a young age. Okay. Let's go to our last patron historic, and this one's kind of unofficial, right? Because he didn't become a Scythe. He didn't say in front of the conclave, this is who I'm gonna be, my patron historic. Rowan becomes Scythe Lucifer at the end of this book, and I know I'm right. Okay, before you try to say, oh, you didn't read the rest of the book, Miss Hanley, how did you know? You didn't read the rest of the series. It's obvious that Scythe Lucifer is Rowan. It's just, if you didn't get that, then, go back and read it. Okay, Lucifer. He chooses the literal devil as his patron historic, which is just incredibly audacious. But he's already doing something very audacious. He's killing scythes. He's going out and finding corrupt scythes and gleaning them with fire. So let's take a look at what is it about Lucifer that could have a connection to Rowan. So obviously we're talking about Lucifer, the fallen angel in Christian theology, and he becomes the devil, right? So, okay, Lucifer, let me see, let's go back here. Meaning morning star, right? So it's actually been referred to as a planet actually in our night sky as well. But let's mainly talk about Lucifer in the biblical sense, because I think that's where the main connections between Rowan and Lucifer are going to be. So in traditional Christian mythology, Lucifer is the most beautiful angel in heaven, under God, and he is God's supposedly favorite angel, right? Favorite one. And the problem is that Lucifer, this kind of goes to his head, right? Because he wants to be God. He was like, well, why can't I be God, right? Why can I be on the same level as you? And so because of this, because of what because of what Lucifer wants, his kind of his greed, these bad things that he has about him, this almost human desire to be on an equal stance. God sends him to hell, casts him out of heaven, and he becomes the fallen angel. In the same way that Rowan is also cast out of the Scythedom. And it's interesting because, Scythe Lucifer seems to be trying to do this vigilante thing. He could have even called himself Scythe Wayne, like Bruce Wayne, Scythe Batman. Yeah, I feel like it would have the same effect. But he is doing kind of like a vigilante thing by going after scythes who are corrupt, who are doing bad in the world and gleaning them. And on top of it, he's chosen black as his robe. So, which is the one color that scythes, actual ordained scythes, never wear because of its association with death and despair. But Scythe Lucifer has taken on black because he wants to differentiate himself from the other scythes, right? He wants to, be a scythe, so to speak, but also not be a part of their community. So he separates himself in that respect. And so in the similar way that Lucifer separates himself from the other angels in heaven, right? Almost in the same way that Goddard did, right? Like Goddard was trying to separate himself from normal people because he was a scythe, and he had to be on the same level as God, which I think is really interesting. That, Rowan is pulling this kind of very similar thing that Goddard had with Lucifer into his own patron historic to be his patron historic and to be his own kind of thing. Okay. Obviously in Christian mythology, Lucifer goes on to be the devil, the actual devil, the embodiment of evil. But in a lot of sense, the devil also comes to represent the antithesis of God, right? The opposite of the normal way of doing things or the traditional way of doing things. And so Rowan, Scythe Lucifer, is doing something different than the way that normal scythes are operating. So interesting. It's really interesting that he chose Lucifer. I think it fits, right? Because it does make him a little scarier and probably makes him a little bit more of like a legend among the scythes, because he has this name that's really associated with evil and death in a very big sense. Okay. That's the end of my presentation on the patron historics of Scythe. I hope you enjoyed it. So now that we know that, now that we've got kind of a little bit more context of the symbols between the patron historic and the robes and stuff, let's make a robe. Can we do that? Can we make a robe? Okay, let's go ahead and get rid of all this, because that's what we have to do, right? We have to design our own Scythe robe. Okay, well, this is perfect. I have the perfect thing to use. That's what I used yesterday for my fan cast. It's called Canva. I'm going to create just a blank page. 8.5 by 11 inches. Okay, try this again. 11, there we go. Perfect. Okay, and we want a robe. I don't think I'm going to find a robe on Canva. I think I'm going to have to look online. Yeah, okay. We'll look online. What am I looking for? Robe. Here we go. I think I've got this. Scythe robe coloring book. Coloring page. Coloring page. Here we go. Okay. So I really didn't want to have all these actual weapons in the picture. I just wanted, okay, how about, we're gonna do Grim Reaper robe coloring page. Okay, here we go. This one seems like a good one, right? We've got the full thing. That seems like a good one. Okay, copy. We're gonna paste it in here. Get rid of that. I'm gonna make it big. Make it as big as I possibly can. And I'm gonna take a small break because I have to go to the bathroom. All right, I'll be right back. Maybe listen to this quiet Japanese lo-fi for a minute. Okay, we're back. We're making a scythe robe. Okay, so first of all, what's the let's take a look at really quick. Let's look at this can be done with actual rubber. Okay, we're doing digitally. Be sure to explain the details you have selected and to also include your scythe name and why you've chosen it. Okay, so I don't know what my scythe, my patron historic would be, but because somebody, I feel like one person in the book already chose Jane Goodall, which would have been mine personally. I like Jane Goodall. Another one could be Sally Ride. Is it Sally Ride? Who was the first woman in space? Yeah, Sally Ride. I did a project on her when I was in middle school, when I was in school. She was American astronaut and physicist. Scythe Ride. That would be fun. I would totally do that. Oh, that's the essay. Hang on. Let's get rid of that. Okay, so as far as color goes, right? What color would I like? You know, I personally like pink. This is not the best thing to use, unfortunately. Can I? No, I don't think I can. Edit image, maybe? We make it pink. Oh, I still have this on. I have to turn this off. I could. Can I do this? Oh, I could always do this. Then I could change the color, right? Yeah. Okay. So is that how big? Is that the brightest? Is that the brightest pink that they have? Yeah, I feel like pink would be my color. But it could be... Who is red? Because Scythe Faraday is like a beige, like a off-white. Who's red in the book? Is there anybody that's red? Or is Scythe Faraday red? Okay, you know what? We can decide this. We can actually look this up. I'm pretty sure Scythe Faraday was white, yeah. His Scythe's robes were ivory. Who had red? I don't think anybody had red. I mean red. Okay, fine. We'll do red. We're changing it. I'm changing it. I'm changing it to red. There we go. Perfect. Oh my gosh, I like that. Okay, so what elements would I want? What kind of, I could do rubies because that's just so obvious. Actually, you know what would be kind of cool? Like a sky, like a turquoise almost. Like a turquoise. Not like a deep blue like Scythe Goddard, but like a turquoise, like a bright blue. Okay, and then you can do like, let's see. Oh, rainbow gems. Yeah, I want to do rainbow gems in my robe. Okay, I'm gonna do rainbow gems. Like Bejeweled, like that one little game on your phone. Perfect. Oh my gosh. Look at how great that looks. Oh my gosh, I'm winning on the conclave carpet. Beautiful. I love it. Okay, so my rainbow jewels. And let's see, who's gonna be my patron historic? You know what would be really funny? Thatcher. Margaret Thatcher. That would be really funny. What could I do famous actors too? Could I do like Meryl Streep? Yeah, Sally Ride. There's also there's a lady, Shirley Chisholm. Shirley Chisholm. She would have been my patron historic. Okay, so I'm between right now. I got Sally Ride as number 1. Number 2, Shirley Chisholm. Shirley Chisholm was an American politician in the 1960s, 1970s, and she was the first black woman elected to U.S. Congress. A hero. Oh, RBG. Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I could be Scythe Ginsburg. Heck yes. Totally be Scythe Ginsburg. Oh my gosh. Okay, I think I'm actually going to choose that. I think I'm actually going to do that. So we're changing it up. I'm changing up my whole robe idea, and I am going with Scythe Ginsburg. What a better way to do it. So what color? Because her robe was black, so I can't choose black, but unfortunately. I could do like a gray. Or I could do a white. No, we can't see white. Could do a white though. Could do a white. What was Ruth Bader Ginsburg's favorite color? Cause right, she did the lace, right? She always did the lace. Oh, she has that green on her earrings. I like that green. But I feel like my gem has to be a pearl, right? I feel like ultimately it should be black with pearls, right? That is a perfect Ruth Bader Ginsburg robe. Yeah, oops. This is gonna take me a long time, I feel like. There we go. That is awesome. Scythe Ginsburg. No. Okay. Okay, now you're just making me mad. Okay, here we go. Scythe Ginsburg. Yes. Okay. So we have Scythe Ginsburg, which is one option. Shirley Chisholm. Let's see some pictures of Shirley Chisholm. Okay, so I feel like this is a good robe color to use. Her crazy patterns, right? I love that. Okay, can I do that? Is that possible? Can I do that? Can I make that appear? I think I can. I'm gonna try something. I didn't mean to do that. This one's gonna be for Chisholm. This is gonna be Scythe Chisholm. And we're gonna make her robe color orange, but I'm gonna make it have a pattern. Photos. Geometric pattern. Here we go. Here we go. That's kind of pattern I want. Let me just look at this really quick. She's got more of like a quilted pattern though on her dress. Uzo Aduba was Shirley Chisholm in what? Mrs. America. Oh, cool. That's so cool. I didn't know that. That's so cool. Now I need to go watch that. I need to go watch that show. Yeah. Okay, so I need some kind of funky pattern to put on here. Maybe I can do that. That looks like a cool pattern, actually. I don't know if I can make it fit. Wish there were a way. Actually, there might be. I know this looks weird right now, but I promise I have a reason for what I'm doing. Okay, let's do this. Just take it down a little bit. Like I said, I know this looks weird, but I'm gonna do the pattern on it. Photos. I wanna do this pattern. Go in there. Go in there, please. Please go in there. You're not gonna go in there. Okay. What about this one? Okay, that one goes in there, but I don't like it. This one, kind of like it. I just feel like it's, I don't know. I just feel like it's not good. Kind of like that pattern though. Is there another better pattern? Geometric pattern. Not really. No, not really any good geometric pattern. This one's kind of a good one. This one kind of looks like the one that's on her, not really though. Not really. It just looks like the roof of a chapel. Okay, well, whatever. I'm gonna do that, and then, let's look. She had these really pretty silver earrings. So maybe like bits of silver in it. What would fit well? Maybe quartz. feel like that one would fit really well with it, but... Ooh, you know what? Obsidian. That would be really cool. But I can't find any free ones. This ones just look like rocks. Okay, well that's what I'm going with for Scythe Chisholm right now. And then the last one is gonna be for Scythe Ride. And she's gonna have a silver robe. Scythe Ride. Whoops, that's not how you spell ride. Scythe Ride is gonna have a silver robe. Okay, let's see if I can make silver. I feel like that's 2 green. Maybe you go blue. Here we go. There we go. That's kind of silvery. That's perfect. Okay, so then what do I want to put on her robe? Moon rocks. Moon rocks. Well, all of that. Some of these look like poop. Can't put that on the robe. Those look like poop. These look like pieces of poop. Okay, it would be kind of cool if I could put some like little moons on there. I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna put some little moons. Perfect. Okay, that's fun. I like that. Okay, so I've got Scythe robes for all 3 of them now. All 3 of my patron historics possible names. Okay, cool. Very cool. So did I accomplish that task? Include your Scythe name as well as why you've chosen it. Okay, well I can go. You know, I like them. I chose Ruth Bader Ginsburg because she's awesome and we miss her so desperately in our world right now. Scythe Chisholm, Shirley Chisholm, amazing black woman in Congress during the 1960s, like during one of the most prominent times for her to be a black woman in Congress. And then Scythe Ride for Sally Ride, for she was an astronaut, female astronaut. Okay, yeah, yay, did all of that. So now we have the guided reading questions. There are 9 of them. So we have to go through these. Basically, I think you have to go through these and just answer them. I think some of them are like opinion questions too, like really more discussion questions. How long have we been going for? We've been going for almost 2 hours. So let's take this last little bit and go through these 9 questions. And then we will read the first chapter in the Thunderhead, which is, because I don't want to go through these quite. There's so much stuff in the back of this book, you guys. Okay, so that's about that. There's so many discussions in here. Good. Wait a minute. Are these the same? Some of them are the same. So they've picked 9 out of the... How many questions are back here? They picked 9 out of the 22 questions that are actually in the back of the book. That's pretty cool. And then extension activities. Okay, well, I'm not going to do that. But I am going to read the first chapter in the next book after we go through these questions. Okay, so the first entry from the Gleaning Journal of H.S. Curie states, "We must, by law, keep a record of the innocents we kill. As I see it, they're all innocents, even the guilty. Why does Curie see mankind as both innocent and guilty? In your opinion, does that matter? Okay, so this is a tough question because I feel like Curie probably sees mankind as both innocent and guilty because, number one, she probably sees most people as innocent because they don't commit crimes, right? It's literally, crime is completely eliminated. There's not even a prison in this world, right? So she probably sees them as innocent. They're not, and she's killing people who aren't Scythes, right? So they've never really killed anybody. But then she says, even the guilty. So why does she see mankind as guilty? I mean, guilty in a sense that they created the AI that has chosen to create Scythes. In your opinion, does it matter? I don't think so. It doesn't really matter because there is no justice system, because there's no crime, right? So, like, does it matter that she sees people as both innocent and guilty? No, because she's not even supposed to use that kind of bias when she gleans. Does it matter that there are innocent and guilty people? No, because there's no repercussions for being a guilty person. And guilty of what, right? Like, that question seems like there's more questions involved in that question than there are answers. Okay, question number 2. Citra thinks, no surprise, that people bent over backwards to please Scythes in every possible way. Hope in the shadow of fear is the world's most powerful motivator. Do you agree? What role does hope have in motivating others? And what ways do people strive to accommodate and influence Scythes? Okay, so there's a lot of questions here. So do you agree that hope in the shadow of fear is the world's most powerful motivator? I think that there's truth to that. I think that is true. You know, people who are in situations that they fear for their lives and they hope for a better future, I think that motivates people to do things that they wouldn't normally do. One of the books that we end up reading in 7th grade is called The Breadwinner, and it's all about a girl who is faced with living in a country in control of the Taliban, and she is fearful of her family's survival and hopes that she can do something to change it. And the only thing that she can do is dress up as a boy to go make money for her family. So yeah, I do think that, and she does, right? She does something that she probably wouldn't normally be motivated to do. In this particular sense, right? Like Citra's talking about how people are afraid that the Scythes will murder or glean them if they do something bad or upset the Scythe, right? Kind of irrational thinking, because that's not how Scythes are supposed to glean. But it is, I guess it is motivating to try to please them. But it's, I don't know. Do I agree that, I guess. Okay. Going back to the question, what role does hope have in motivating others? I think that just goes with, like, right, what we think about our future, right? We hope that we will have a good future, and so it'll motivate us to do things to get that future. This is a really interesting question. It's kind of a really hard question too. In what ways do people strive to accommodate and influence the Scythes? This one's, I mean, you can pull out copy examples from the book, but, you know, like by giving them food, right? Goddard gets all of this food catered for his parties. The businessman gives Goddard his house in the hope that he won't be gleaned if he refuses. But even, you know, Scythe Faraday and Scythe Curie get things, right? I mean, Scythe Curie gets a car for kind of a different reason. But Scythe Faraday gets his fair share of people trying to, like, help him and stuff and do things for him. So there are lots of ways they strive to accommodate the Scythes. Influence, I don't know if there's like a ton of influence involved in that, like, because people can't really do much to influence a Scythe in what they're going to do, right? They can try to stop it, but then they would be sentencing their whole families to death if they did. So that's an interesting question. That's kind of a interesting discussion question. Okay, number 3. Consider what you've learned about Citra and Rowan. What is it about these two teens that make them seem like appropriate candidates as Scythe apprentices? So yeah, I want to start with that first question. First of all, Citra and Rowan are chosen by Scythe Faraday because of their kind of demeanor to him when he goes to glean people nearby. So Faraday goes to Citra's house to eat dinner before he goes to glean her neighbor, but the way that Citra approaches him while he's there shows a lot about her character, right? I mean, she's kind of abrasive to him. She's asking him questions. She's not afraid to talk to him. She's kind of like short with him, right? She doesn't want him to be there. And she's almost like a protective figure in the family. Like when he arrives, like she's doing her best to try and get him out of there so he doesn't deal with her family, doesn't try to glean one of her family members, which probably says to Faraday, okay, she cares and she's not afraid, right? She's showing fearlessness in the face of literal death. So maybe that's a big reason why she was chosen. Rowan, on the other hand, I think he got chosen because, you know, again, this kind of fearlessness of willing to put himself in a position that he wouldn't normally be in to do a good thing for somebody, right? So like he doesn't go to Cole's Gleaning for the reasons that all of his friends think that he went to Cole's Gleaning. He goes because he wants to be there for him, because he wants to not let him be alone. He sees this literal like surprise, right? Like of having the kid be gleaned when he is there, and none of the adults are there, right? None of the adults there go to be with Cole when he is gleaned. Rowan is the only one who volunteers, and on top of it, his experience in that gleaning was speaking highly to his character. You know, he holds Cole's hand. He tells people that Cole's last words were something, you know, meaningful. Like he cares. He cares. He shows like he cares. So I think that that's like a big reason why Faraday chose both of them, is that they have this energy in them that drives them to not fear Scythes and not fear death and want to care for other people. Okay. In what ways are they similar and how are they different? Okay, so I think I talked about how they were similar, right? Like, you know, Citra, they both care about people. They've both shown fearlessness in the face of the embodiment of death. And how they're different, I mean, you know, Citra doesn't participate in any kind of gleaning, right? She's not there for her neighbor's gleaning, but she does kind of become an accomplice with the knife, right? In order to show her that we're all accomplices in this act. And Rowan is there, you know, Rowan is like involved in the gleaning with Cole and to a certain extent, right? Like he holds his hand, right? He talks to Faraday while it's happening. So they're similar in the same way that they both kind of were complicit in the gleanings that happened on their day they met Faraday, but different because of the proximity of them being so close. And unfortunately for Rowan, Citra kind of gets away with this Scythe experience pretty scot-free, right? Nobody comes up to her and says, why didn't you help my mom or my sister when she was gleaned? Why weren't you there? You know? And instead, Rowan does those things, right? Rowan goes to be with Cole and try to be supportive, and it ends up backfiring on him. It ends up making him less of a good person in so many people's eyes, right? In fact, the rumors spread that he helped the Scythe glean Cole, and then in fact that Rowan picked Cole out of people to be gleaned, right? Like there was like he had an active hand in Cole's death. So I think that's something that makes them very significantly different, and it also kind of mimics both of their paths down their training in the rest of the book. Given what you discover about them, is there one character you like better than the other? If so, why? No. No, there is not a character I like better than the other. I like both of them. And I mean, I think maybe you're supposed to not like Rowan at the end of the book. There's a possibility or not. Like with what you're supposed to have kind of Curie's perspective about him, that he's been tainted by Goddard, that he's been kind of led astray. But I think when we get Rowan's perspective throughout the whole book, he's still a good guy. He's still a guy who cares about people. He's still a guy who cares about what's happening in the Scythedom. He still cares about Citra, right? At the end of the book, you see evidence of all of that. So I don't think that I like either one of them better than the other. Citra has her own flaws, in my opinion, like obviously I think it goes without saying that Rowan has these flaws, but Citra has her own flaws. Like I said, when we were reading, she asks both Scythe Curie and Scythe Faraday to cheat for her when she does the tests, right? She wants Scythe Faraday to give her information about what the first test is going to be. She wants Scythe Curie to give her information about what the tests are going to be before they happen. So Citra has her own faults that make her not so likable, which is a big one. For me, it is a big one. The one where she asks about cheating, mainly because it seems very contradictory to how she operates when it comes to other things, right? She does seem like she has the capacity to do whatever it takes to become number one or to get ahead, right? She has that very intense, aggressive, competitive nature in her, at least from what I'm seeing. That was my interpretation. Okay, number 4, after meeting Rowan for the first time at Cole's cleaning, Faraday tells Rowan, "You stood your ground for a boy you barely knew. You comforted him at the moment of his death, bearing the pain of the jolt. You bore witness even though no one called you to do so. Why does this act impress Faraday so much?" I think it's probably impressed him because nobody else did it, especially the adults, like the principal, the teachers, the office staff didn't stand up to do that. It's not something that I think a lot of people in this world would do if given the opportunity, given the chance. And not only that, but it's what comes after, It's Faraday knows what's going to happen to Rowan. Rowan doesn't necessarily know what's going to happen to him, but Faraday is impressed by the fact that Rowan basically just doesn't really care about what it looks like for him being there and cares more about Cole himself as an individual, as a person who is going to be gleaned. Rowan doesn't care about what it looks like to other people or what other people are going to think. He cares about, in that moment, he cares about Cole. He cares about the individual, which is what Faraday wants from the junior Scythes that he trains, right? He wants them to think about the individual and think about, the person behind the number that they're gleaning. Okay. Number 5, did learning that Scythe Faraday attends the funerals of those he gleans surprise you? For what reason do you think it's significant that he does this? I don't think it surprises me. In the same way that it didn't surprise me that Scythe Curie cooks dinner for the families of the people she gleans, right? I think in the same way, it's the same reason that Scythe Curie does her dinners, because she cares about the families. She wants to respect it. Like, there's an element that they have about death that Goddard and Chomsky and Rand did not have about death. And it's that Faraday and Curie respect it, right? Especially permanent death, right? It's not like, oh, you revive, you come back, right? It's literal. It's the end of that person's life. It's the end of that life forever, right? They're never coming back. And that, I think, they hold a certain respect for. And because they do specific things to show that respect, like attending funerals and having dinners for the families. Okay, number 6. In the instructions Faraday gives Citra and Rowan, he tells them, "You shall study history, the great philosophers, the sciences. You will come to understand the nature of life and what it means to be human before you are permanently charged with taking of life. You will also study all forms of killcraft and become experts." What do you believe are his motivations to have his apprentices study both the arts and sciences? How does this benefit them and their potential future work? Okay, so this is a good time. I don't know if we ever talked about it when they went to the art exhibit, but he takes them to the art exhibit to show them art from the Age of Mortality. in order to kind of give them an idea, I think his motivations to have them study both the arts and the sciences, obviously the sciences, so you can know how things work. You're not just blind as to the human body and physics and the elements and all of that kind of stuff. You have to have an understanding of that, how that works, right? And the chemicals in people's body. But I think you also have to understand the emotions behind that. And that comes from art, right? Art is an expression of emotions. And one of the things that's kind of missing in this world is the emotion of true mortal fear, right? Fear of death, of actual death. And those, I mean, you have to understand those emotions, because if you're going to be a scythe, you're going to have to make other people experience that fear for the first time in their hundreds of years of life. You're going to have to make people be afraid of death. And you have to understand that. Like, you have to understand that emotions and what comes with that, because people react differently when faced with death, as we've seen in the book, right? One guy fights Faraday off and tries to stop him. Other people are in denial. Why me? How could it be me? Right? You know, like, I've never known anybody to be gleaned, right? So like, you have to be ready to experience those emotions and help people work through those emotions when they are faced with gleaning. Like, you have to understand that. And I think that's how that benefits them in their potential future work, right? They have to interact with people on a daily basis, pretty much, not just with physically, scientifically, how it goes through the body, but also emotionally, philosophically, morally, what they deal with. Okay. Number 7, Volta states that Scythe Goddard is the future. Given what you have learned about the new guard of Scythes, what makes that so disconcerting? What do you believe motivates Goddard to behave the way he does? So obviously we're supposed to look at Scythe Goddard as a villain because of the way he approaches his job, right? You see multiple instances of Goddard taking his posse with him to do mass gleanings. And while there's no law against it, his mass gleanings are particularly ferocious, right? He gleans the whole plain. He gleans people at the mall, at the Tonist monastery, right? That was like, and it's, all of them are brutal. All of them are violent, right? And Goddard likes it that way. He wants it to be violent. He wants it to be big and extravagant. He doesn't want there to be a quota on killings. He doesn't want there to be a limit, right? So for Volta to say that he is the future, it's disconcerting, because what if, shoot, oh my God, I felt a hand on my shoulder. Oh my gosh, there's a ghost in here? I just felt a spirit on my shoulder. Okay, woo, that was kind of scary. I was in the middle of talking. Oh, that was so weird. Okay, what was I saying? I can't remember. So, okay. So I was saying that Scythe Goddard, it's disconcerting that he's the future, because what if all of the Scythes became corrupt like him? What if they all just killed without a quota, without a limit, right? Then most of the world would be dead, right? You would have Scythes running around literally just murdering people. And there would be, if you break down that first barrier of having a quota, right? That leaves room for other barriers to be broken down, right? Well, maybe I can glean only the ugly people. Well, maybe I can glean only people of this area, or this ethnic makeup, right? Like, there are other possible breakdowns in the restrictions around the Scythedom that could break down if they do follow Goddard, and if his teachings kind of come to fruition, or his ideas come to fruition. What do you believe motivates Goddard to behave the way he does? I think Goddard has a severe narcissist complex. I think oh, you know what? I just realized this. Maybe Goddard chose Goddard as his patron historic because the word God is in his last name, and that's how he sees himself, right? He sees himself as a god. So maybe that's why he chose Goddard, because it has God in the last name. So it makes sense for his his idea of himself. I just thought of that. That's really interesting. Smart thinking. Okay, let's continue on. Number 8. We got 2 more to go and then we're going to be done. Why does Citra become so committed to understanding the details of Faraday's last day? Do you think she's right to grow suspicious about his death? Consider the consequences of her actions. How does her need to learn what happened put her in danger? And why are those involved in his death so worried the truth will be revealed? What is your reaction to the realizations that things may not be as they appear? Okay, so many questions in that one little number. Okay, why is Citra so committed to understanding the details of Faraday's last day? She believes he didn't commit suicide. That's it, right? She thinks there's no way he would self-glean when we're in this situation and give up his life for 2 kids, right? I think Citra knows also, as much as Faraday cares about Citra and Rowan, I think Citra also knows he wouldn't just give up his whole life to 2 teenagers, right? For two teenagers to not have to go through this, right? There's no way. So, additionally, she comes to realize that there are people around at the time who were given immunity. That's a big piece of evidence that indicates that something happened that other people didn't want them to know about, didn't want other people to get around, right? I think she's absolutely right to be suspicious about his death. There are so many pieces of evidence that lead her to think that something is wrong, that this is not right. She's smart enough to see that. I think that goes without saying. Consider the consequences of her actions. How does her need to learn what happened put her in danger? She is doing something illegal, right? She's using a Scythe's login information to get into the back brain, to look up information about people and about others, just so she can know what happened to Faraday. It's not for work, it's right. It's not for her. It's not for Curie's Scythe. And Scythe Curie doesn't know, right? She's done it without her consent. That's illegal. And also, it does get her into her trouble. It does put her in danger because, I don't know. It's not that directly, but it does kind of, because she tells Rowan, which has got to be the stupidest thing you can ever do. And then of course, Rowan brings it up to Goddard. I mean, listen, I know he didn't do it on purpose, or did he? I know he didn't. I don't think he did it on purpose, but still, they're just, it's just dumb. It was a dumb move. Because Goddard, once he hears that, once he's, thinking somebody's on to me about trying to accuse me of someone's death, I got to get them first, right? Like, that's automatically going to be in his brain. And why are those involved in his death so worried the truth will be revealed? Obviously, the truth is that Scythe Faraday did not self-clean, that he is still alive. He's in what he likes to call retirement. And obviously, if people found out that he was still alive, not only would the people who helped him fake his death be in trouble, but also he would be in trouble. There would be punishment involved, because you can't do that. The only way to get out of being a Scythe is to self-clean, right? You're a Scythe for life, right? There's no retirement. You can't stop being a Scythe. So yeah. Okay. Last one. Compare the ways in which Citra and Rowan deal with each other and their apprenticeships. What can be learned about the character of each from these interactions and relationships? Okay. Did my music stop already? Yes. I want to keep watching. Goodness. Okay. So we talked about this already a little bit, but Citra and Rowan are very different and obviously approach things differently, but clearly they have a little bit bigger sense of the world itself, but also I think they have their own desire, their own motivation to change, right? Like, they obviously both see the problems with the current way that the Scythedom is being run, and have been fostered by two of the Rowan is fostered by Scythe Faraday, and Citra by Scythe Curie. But they have both of these really strong people in their life that are kind of guiding them to a path that will change, that will help the world change. But they're both doing it in very different ways, right? It seems like Citra it seems like to me, if I had to guess what was going to happen in the next book, if I had to guess what was going to happen, because I haven't read it, I would guess that Citra would be the inside man, so to speak, right? She would be the ordained Scythe in the Scythedom that is working to change it within. And then Rowan is the outside man, right? He's the one who's changing it vigilante style on his own by becoming Scythe Lucifer. So I feel like maybe they secretly end up working together. This is my guess. I don't know if this is what happens, so if it is, I'm sorry. But this is my guess. They secretly end up working together to bring down or to change the Scythedom as it is. Maybe even change the whole world altogether. That's what I think. Okay, well, that's it for the questions in the project. We did a fabulous job, everybody. I'm so proud of you. Woo, we did it. We did it. Okay, so what we're going to do now that we have come this far, we are going to read the first chapter in, what's it called? The Thunderhead? The Thunderhead. Just Thunderhead. Just Thunderhead. I'm going to read the first chapter. It's the very last pages of the book Scythe, and I just want to see, I just want to show you guys what might happen in the next book. If you are interested in reading the series, I highly recommend it. I'm definitely going to read Thunderhead. That's going to be one of the next books I take with me on my vacation. I still have several other summer reading books on my list, on my pile of books to read. And I gotta admit, some of them I'm having a really hard time getting through. Scythe was not one of the books I had a hard time getting through. I just ripped through this in a couple of days. I love, love, love this book. I also really liked several of the other books. I liked The Leaving. It was okay. I read it really quick. But some of the other books just feel like I'm just dragging on them. Okay, so yeah, I feel like I just want to read this book next. Okay, so let's read the first chapter. I don't even know if it's the first chapter. It could just be the first couple pages. Look for Thunderhead, book 2 in the Arc of a Scythe trilogy by Neal Shusterman. Peach velvet with embroidery baby blue trim. Honorable Scythe Brahms loved his robe. True, the velvet became uncomfortably hot in summer months, but it was something he had grown accustomed to in his 63 years as a Scythe. He had recently turned the corner again, resetting his physical age back to a spry 25, and now in his third youth, he found his appetite for gleaning was stronger than ever. His routine was always the same, though methods varied. He would choose his subject, restrain him or her, then play a lullaby. Brahms' lullaby, to be exact, the most famous piece of music composed by his patron historic. After all, it is if a Scythe must choose a figure from history to name oneself after, shouldn't that figure be integrated somehow into the Scythe's life? He would play the lullaby on whatever instrument was convenient, and if there was none available, he would simply hum it, and then he would end the subject's life. Politically, he leaned toward the teachings of the late Scythe Goddard of Mid-America, for he enjoyed gleaning immensely and saw no reason why that should be a problem for anyone. In a perfect world, shouldn't we all enjoy what we do? Goddard wrote. It was a sentiment gaining traction in more and more regional Scythedoms. On this evening, Scythe Brahms had just accomplished a particularly entertaining gleaning in downtown Omaha, and was still whistling his signature tune as he sauntered down the street, wondering where he might find himself a late evening meal. But he stopped in mid-stanza, having a distinct feeling that he was being watched. There were, of course, cameras on every light post in the city. The Thunderhead was ever vigilant, but for a Scythe, its slumberness, unblinking eyes were of no concern. it was powerless to even comment on the comings and goings of Scythes, much less act upon anything it saw. The Thunderhead was the ultimate voyeur of death. This feeling, however, was more than the observational nature of the Thunderhead. Scythes were trained in perceptive skills. They were not prescient, which means like being able to know something before it happens, but 5 highly developed senses could often have the semblance of a 6th. A scent, a sound, an errant shadow, too minor to register consciously might be enough to make a well-trained Scythe's neck hairs bristle. Scythe Brahms turned, sniffed, listened. He took in his surroundings. He was alone on a street. Elsewhere, I'll just turn this down just a tad. Elsewhere, he could hear the sounds of street cafes and ever-vibrant nightlife of the city. But the street he was on was lined with shops that were shuttered this time of night. Cleaners and clothiers, a hardware store, and a daycare center. The lonely street belonged to him and the unseen interloper. "Come out," he said. "I know you're there." He thought it might be a child, or perhaps an unsavory, hoping to bargain for immunity. As if an unsavory might have anything with which to bargain. Maybe it was a tonist. Tone cults despised scythes, and although Brahms had never heard of a tonist actually attacking a scythe, they have been known to torment. "I won't harm you," Brahms said. "I've just completed a gleaning. I have no desire to increase my tally today." Although, admittedly, he might change his mind if the interloper was either too offensive or obsequious. Still, no one stepped forward. "Fine," he said. "Be gone, then. I have neither time nor patience for a game of hide-and-seek." Perhaps it was his imagination after all. Maybe his rejuvenated senses were now so acute that they were responding to stimuli that was much farther away than he assumed. That's when a figure launched from behind him, behind a parked car, as if it had been spring-loaded. Brahms was knocked off balance. He would have been taken down entirely if he still had the slow reflexes of an older man, but not his 25-year-old self. He pushed the figure into a wall and considered pulling out his blades to glean this reprobate. But Scythe Brahms had never been a brave man, so he ran. He moved in and out of pools of light created by the street lamps, all the while cameras atop each pole swiveled to watch him. When he turned to look, the figure was a good 20 yards behind him. Now Brahms could see he was dressed in a black robe. Was it a Scythe's robe? No, it couldn't be. No Scythe dressed in black. It was not allowed. But there were rumors. That thought made him pick up the pace. He could feel adrenaline tingling in his fingers and add urgent velocity to his heart. A Scythe in black. No, there had to be another explanation. He would report it to I can't say those. Hang on. I'm just gonna turn the music off real quick. Okay, now we're gonna go back here. Okay. He would turn him in to, he would report this to the Irregularity Committee. That's what he would do. Yes, that might launch it. They might laugh at him and say he was scared off by a masquerading unsavory, but these things needed to be reported. Even if they were embarrassing, it was his civic duty. A block further and his assailant had given up the chase. He was nowhere to be seen. Scythe Brahms slowed his pace. He was nearing a more active part of the city now. The beat of dance music and the garble of conversation careened down the street toward him, giving him a sense of security. Here we go. He let his guard down, which was a mistake. The dark figure broadsided him from a narrow alley and delivered a knuckle punch to his windpipe. As Brahms gasped for air, his attacker kicked his legs out from underneath him in a Bakator kick, the brutal martial art in which scythes were trained. Brahms landed on a crate of rotting cabbage left by the side of a market. It burst, spewing forth a thick methane reek. His breath could only come in short gasps, and he could feel warmth spreading through his body as his pain nanites released opiates. "No, not yet. I must not be numbed. I need my full faculties to fight this miscreant." But pain nanites were simple missionaries of relief, hearing only the scream of angry nerve endings. They ignored his wishes and deadened his pain. Brahms tried to rise, but slipped as the putrid vegetation crushed beneath him, becoming a slick, unpleasant stew. The figure in black was on top of him now, pinning him to the ground. Brahms tried to reach into his robe for his weapons, but could not. So instead he reached up and pulled back the attacker's black hood. revealing him to be a young man, barely a man, a boy. His eyes were intense, and intent on, to use a mortal age word, murder. Scythe Johann by... I can't say this guy's name. Sorry. Scythe Johann Brahms, you are accused of abusing your position in multiple crimes against humanity. How dare you, Brahms gasped. Who are you to accuse me? He struggled, trying to rally his strength, but it was no use. The painkillers that were now in his system were deadening his responses. His muscles were weak and useless to him now. I think you know who I am, the young man said. Let me hear you say it. I will not, Brahms said, determined not to give him the satisfaction. But the boy in black jammed a knee so powerfully into Brahms' chest that he thought his heart would stop. More pain nanites. More opiates. Brahms' head was swimming. He had no choice but to comply. Lucifer, he gasped. Scythe Lucifer. Brahms felt his spirit crumble, as if saying it aloud gave resonance to the rumor. Satisfied, the self-proclaimed young Scythe eased the pressure. You are no Scythe, Brahms dared to say. You are nothing but a failed apprentice, and you will not get away with this. The young man had no response to that. Instead, he said, Tonight, you gleaned a young woman by blade. That is my business, not yours. You gleaned her as a favor for a friend who wanted out of a relationship with her. Gross. How outrageous. You have no proof of that. I've been watching you, Johann, Rowan said, as well as your friend, who seemed awfully relieved when that poor woman was gleaned. Suddenly there was a knife at Brahms' neck, his own knife. The beast of a boy was threatening him with his own knife. Do you admit it? He asked Brahms. All that he said was true, but Brahms would rather be rendered deadish than admit it to the likes of a failed apprentice, even one with a knife at his throat. Go on, slit my throat, Brahms dared. It will add one more inexcusable crime to your record, and when I'm revived, I will stand as witness against you, and make no mistake, you will be brought to justice. By whom? By the Thunderhead? I've taken down corrupt Scythes from one coast to the other over the past year, and the Thunderhead hasn't sent so much as a single peace officer to stop me. Why do you think that is? Brahms was speechless. He'd assumed if he stalled long enough and kept his so-called Scythe Lucifer occupied, the Thunderhead would dispatch a full squad to apprehend him. That's what the Thunderhead did when common citizens threatened violence. Brahms was surprised it had even gone this far. Such behavior among the general population was supposed to be a thing of the past. Why was this being allowed? If I take your life now, the false Scythe said, you would not be brought back to life. I burn those I remove from service, leaving nothing but unrevivable ash. I don't believe you. You wouldn't dare. But Brahms did believe him. Since last January, nearly a dozen Scythes across 3 American regions had been consumed by flames under questionable circumstances. Their deaths were ruled accidental, but clearly they were not. And because they were burned, their deaths were permanent. Now Brahms knew that the whispered tales of Scythe Lucifer, the outrageous acts of Rowan Damish, the fallen apprentice, fallen angel, fallen apprentice, were all true. Brahms closed his eyes and took in a final breath, trying not to gag on the rancid stench of putrid cabbage. And then Rowan said, You won't be dying today, Scythe Brahms, not even temporarily. He removed the blade from Brahms' neck. I'm giving you one chance. If you act with the nobility befitting a Scythe and glean with honor, you won't see me again. But if you continue to serve your own corrupt appetites, then you will be left as ash. And then he was gone, almost as if he had vanished. And in his place was a horrified young couple looking down upon Brahms. Is that a Scythe? Quick, help me get him up! They lifted Brahms from the rot. His peach velvet robe was stained green and brown, as if covered in mucus. It was humiliating. He considered gleaning the couple, for no one should see a Scythe so indisposed and live, but instead held out his hand and allowed them to kiss his ring, thereby granting them both a year of immunity from gleaning. He told them it was a reward for their kindness, but really it was just to make them go away and abandon any questions they might have had. After they had left, he brushed himself off and resolved to say nothing to the Irregularity Committee about this, because it would leave him open to far too much ridicule and derision. He had suffered enough indignation already. Scythe Lucifer, indeed. Few things were more miserable in this world than a failed Scythe's apprentice, and never had there been one as ignoble as Rowan Damish. Yet he knew that the boy's threat was not an idle one. Perhaps, thought Scythe Brahms, a lower profile was in order, a return to the lackluster gleanings he had been trained to perform in his youth, a refocusing on the basics that would make him Honorable Scythe, more than just a title, but a defining trait. Stained, bruised, and bitter, Scythe Brahms returned to his home to reconsider his place in the perfect world in which he lived. That's the Thunderhead. That's the second book of the Scythe, or of just Scythe. Yeah. So if you are interested in reading the rest of the series, there are 2 other official books in the series, and then there's one like stories of gleanings from like it's like a 4th book, short stories about this world. I absolutely love this book. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope today's video helped you get through your project, your summer reading project, a little bit easier. Maybe you come up with some cool ideas for what to do for your summer reading project as it draws ever nearer to the first day of school. And yeah, I hope you all have been enjoying your summer, enjoying my summer streams if you've been watching them. Thank you so much for stopping by. I really appreciate it. And yeah, I hope you have a wonderful day. So I will see you all later. Have a fabulous day, and I will see you in class. Bye. Let's get out of here.